Take a look in the back of your car. Right beneath the trunk liner, there is a heavy, rusted steel jack, a lug wrench, and an entire spare wheel sitting there, dead weight. And the only reason you have hauled those extra 30 pounds across every single kilometer you've ever driven is because the 4 pieces of rubber holding your life off the road are essentially pressurized balloons. And one stray roofing nail on the highway can completely ruin your day in under 60 seconds. Think about that for a second. We drive around in machines with radar cruise control, heated leather, and supercomputers on board. Yet the whole thing collapses the moment a tiny piece of metal punctures a pocket of trapped air. Roughly 200 million tires get thrown into landfills every single year before the tread even wears down. Not because the rubber failed, but simply because the air leaked out, the sidewall tore, or the pressure went unnoticed. By the end of this video, you are going to see why that entire 130-year-old headache is about to disappear, and why the quiet factory shift solving it isn't happening in Germany or Detroit, but inside massive injection molds on the other side of the world. To understand why this is such a massive deal, look at how we got stuck with air in the first place. Back in the 1890s, the Michelin brothers figured out something brilliant. Trapped, squeezed air is cheap. It's light. And when you hit a pothole, air squashes down and absorbs the blow better than almost anything on Earth. So for over a century, every major tire brand on the planet did the exact same thing. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They just kept adding thicker wire belts, synthetic fabrics, and complex chemical blends to build a tougher prison for that air. If you enjoy breaking down the engineering behind everyday things we take for granted, take a second to hit subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel dig deeper into these stories. Because here is what the new design actually looks like when you strip the secrets away. Picture cutting a tire clean in half. In a traditional tire, you look inside and see nothing. Just an empty, hollow, dark space meant to hold high-pressure gas. Now look inside an airless tire. There is no hollow chamber. There is no valve stem. Instead, you see an open, intricate web of engineered polymer spokes fanning out from the center hub to the outer tread. In some prototypes, it looks like a honeycomb. In others, a row of curved fiberglass arches. When your car rolls over a sharp rock, the spokes at the very bottom, the ones physically pressed against the pavement, flex and buckle inward. They swallow the impact whole. And as the wheel turns, those spokes snap right back into shape while the next set takes the load. The car isn't floating on a cushion of gas anymore. It is hanging from the top of an engineered structure. This isn't a tire that holds air. It's a structure that replaces air. Drive a heavy steel bolt straight through the tread? Nothing happens. No hissing sound. No dashboard warning light. No kneeling in dirty slush on the shoulder of the road trying to loosen frozen lug nuts. You just keep driving. The physics are tested. Prototypes have already been driven at 130 miles per hour on real asphalt. But if the engineering is already finished, why can't you walk into a shop and buy a set for your car today? The answer has nothing to do with the laboratory. It comes down to a brutal reality on the factory floor. Before we talk about why these tires aren't on your car yet, you have to understand something critical. The auto industry already tried to kill the flat tire once, and they failed miserably. About 20 years ago, car manufacturers thought they had solved this forever with run-flat tires. You might even have them on your car right now if you drive a BMW or a Mercedes. The logic sounded great in the brochure. Instead of removing the air, they reinforced the rubber sidewalls with massive, stiff plastic inserts. If you picked up a nail, the sidewall was strong enough to hold up the car for another 50 kilometers. Just enough to limp off the highway and find a garage. Car executives loved it. Why? Because they could completely eliminate the spare wheel, reduce vehicle weight on paper, and free up trunk space. Then rail drivers actually took them on the road. Those ultra-stiff sidewalls that hold up the car during a flat are also ultra-stiff sidewalls every other second you drive. The ride turned rock hard. Every minor crack in the asphalt rattled straight through the steering column and into your spine. Worse, they cost double the price of a normal tire. They wore out thousands of kilometers faster. And if you got a puncture, most shops refused to patch them because driving with zero pressure destroyed the internal lining. A simple €15 patch job turned into a €400 replacement bill. Drivers absolutely despised them. In fact, one of the first things luxury car owners did when their factory run flats wore out was pay money to swap them back to old-fashioned pneumatic tires. That failure taught the entire industry a hard lesson. Drivers desperately want an unpoppable tire, but they refuse to pay for it with a miserable ride and double the cost. And that brings us to the real battlefield. Because while Western legacy brands spent years trying to polish an expensive product that drivers rejected, manufacturers in China took a completely different path. They didn't start with luxury passenger cars. They started where the economics are brutal and unforgiving: commercial fleets. If you have walked through Shanghai, Beijing, or even used rental bikes in European capitals like Paris or London, you have probably ridden on an airless tire without even realizing it. The massive shared bike networks made the switch years ago. Why? Because when a company owns 100,000 rental bikes scattered across a city, sending a van and 2 technicians to fix flat tires every single morning is a financial death sentence. Airless honeycomb wheels completely wiped out that operating cost overnight. From bikes, Chinese manufacturers quickly scaled the design into automated delivery pods, electric warehouse forklifts, street sweeping robots, and low-speed urban shuttles. Notice what happened here. They didn't wait for a luxury car brand to give them permission. They started mass-producing airless tires by the tens of millions for industrial use. Every single batch molded on a Chinese factory floor solved another small engineering flaw. They perfected the polymer blends. They optimized the cooling channels. They figured out how to cast the entire wheel in a single injection step, driving the production cost lower with every passing month. While European giants were running cautious trials on a handful of test vehicles, Chinese suppliers built the entire supply chain underneath them. Now, pause and ask yourself a quick question. If you had to replace your tires tomorrow, would you trust an airless tire built by an emerging factory over a traditional pneumatic tire from a heritage brand like Michelin or Continental? Drop your perspective in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this deep dive, take a moment to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss where this story goes next. Because the legacy tire giants in Europe have a massive problem on their hands. Brands like Michelin in France, Continental in Germany, and Pirelli in Italy generate immense revenue from the replacement cycle. You buy tires, they hit potholes, they wear unevenly, they pop, you buy more. If an airless wheel hits the European market that can last 3 times longer, resists every puncture, and simply needs a new tread belt glued on every few years like resoling a leather boot, it doesn't just disrupt the market. It threatens the core financial foundation of the century-old tire industry. The race is real. But before these wheels take over your local motorway, there are 3 massive engineering hurdles that still have to be solved. And the first one is deadly. Let's be entirely honest about where this technology actually stands today. Because despite the massive progress in commercial fleets, if you tried to bolt a prototype set of airless tires onto your daily commuter car right now, you would immediately hit a wall of physics. There are 3 specific barriers keeping this off the consumer market. And the third one is a problem almost nobody sees coming. The first barrier is heat. In a standard tire, the air inside doesn't just hold the car up. It acts as a natural, circulating cooling system. It absorbs the friction from the road and dissipates it. An airless tire is entirely different. It is a dense, physical structure. Think about what happens when you take a thick metal paperclip and rapidly bend it back and forth in your hands. Within seconds, the metal gets burning hot in your fingers. That exact same physical stress is happening inside an airless tire. Those polymer spokes are flexing, compressing, and snapping back into place thousands of times every single minute. At low speeds on a warehouse forklift, that heat easily bleeds off into the surrounding air. But at 130 kilometers per hour, for 4 continuous hours on a sun-baked highway in southern Spain, that constant kinetic friction generates a terrifying amount of internal heat. If the chemical composition of the polymer isn't flawless, the structure literally degrades from the inside out. The second barrier is weight. You cannot replace a pocket of weightless gas with physical webbing without adding mass. Airless tires are inherently heavier than traditional ones. In automotive engineering, this is called unsprung mass, and it is an absolute nightmare for efficiency. This isn't just about making the car feel sluggish. It is about energy consumption. On a modern electric vehicle, where engineers fight over every single gram of weight to protect the battery range. Bolting heavy, solid structures to the axles brutally degrades how far the car can travel on a single charge. And then there is the third problem, the one that keeps engineers awake at night: debris. Look at that open web design again. The exact openness that allows the tire to flex and absorb a pothole also makes it a perfect scoop for wet mud, packed snow, and road grit. Imagine driving through a winter storm in Munich. Those open cavities immediately pack solid with freezing slush. A tire loaded unevenly with a block of heavy ice is an unbalanced tire. The moment you accelerate to highway speeds, that frozen debris creates a violent, shuddering vibration in the steering wheel that makes the vehicle completely undrivable. Designers are testing ultra-thin, flexible sidewall covers to block the debris without trapping the heat inside, but it is a deeply frustrating balancing act. Furthermore, a tire is a legally regulated safety component. Cannot just work in a lab. It has to survive perfectly in sub-zero ice, blistering summer heat, and brutal impacts, without maintenance, for half a decade. But notice what is missing from that list of problems. Not a single one of those issues questions whether the core concept actually works. Heat is a chemical materials problem. Weight is a geometric design problem. Debris is a physical shielding problem. None of these are absolute laws of physics telling us the airless tire is impossible. They are simply manufacturing bottlenecks. And they are exactly the kind of bottlenecks that get solved by building tens of millions of units, pushing them to the breaking point and refining the mold, which is precisely the silent, high-volume repetition that Chinese factories are executing on micromobility fleets every single day, while the rest of the world waits for the perfect passenger prototype. Which brings us to the final horizon, how this actually arrives on your driveway. To understand how this story actually ends, you do not need to look at the automotive industry at all. You just need to look at the computer sitting on your desk. Think back to the mechanical hard drives we all relied on 20 years ago. For decades, the entire digital world was stored on fragile metal platters spinning at high speeds under a microscopic needle. If you dropped your laptop, the needle scratched the disk, and your data was permanently destroyed. It was a terrible, vulnerable system. When solid-state flash memory first appeared, it was heavily criticized. The early solid-state drives were outrageously expensive. They held very little data. They had massive overheating problems. The legacy hard drive manufacturers dismissed them as a niche product that would never scale to the consumer market. But the supply chains in Asia didn't listen to the critics. They simply put their heads down and scaled the manufacturing. They brute-forced the physics. They optimized the silicon wafers. The cost curve slowly inverted. And then, almost overnight, the spinning hard drive was completely eradicated from the consumer laptop market. It wasn't a gradual transition. It was an avalanche. The pneumatic tire is the spinning hard drive of the modern transportation world. It is a fragile 19th century mechanism living on borrowed time. The very thing that makes the traditional tire function, trapped pressurized gas, is the exact same thing that guarantees its eventual failure. The heavy lifting of the engineering is essentially finished. The suspension bridge architecture works. The materials are rapidly catching up to the physics. What remains is a brutal, global war over supply chain dominance and cost reduction. And as we have seen with solar panels, flat-screen displays, and electric car batteries, those manufacturing wars are rarely won in European research laboratories. They are won inside the injection molding factories of Shenzhen, Shandong, and Guangzhou. The flat tire is not a permanent law of nature. It is simply an engineering problem we haven't scaled the solution for yet. But the mold has already been cast, and the air is finally being let out of the room. So I have one specific question for you to answer down below. When this technology finally clears the regulatory hurdles and lands at your local mechanic, not as an expensive luxury upgrade, but at the exact same price as a standard set of tires, will you make the switch immediately? Or is a 130-year-old cushion of air simply too comfortable to walk away from? Let me know your exact thought process in the comments. If this video changed the way you look at the hidden engineering of our daily lives, take a second to hit subscribe. Next week, we are breaking down a completely different silent revolution and looking at how a massive shift in battery chemistry is about to completely rewrite the global shipping industry. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.